A new order by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission could upend the traditional utility system as we know it. Basically, it's complicated, but in a sense, it allows small-scale energy resources like a solar panel or your electric car to actually supply power back to the wholesale power market, an opportunity previously reserved for big power plants. Joining us now is Neil Chatterjee. He is the chairman of FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, after ruling on, I would say, Mr. Commissioner, a landmark ruling. I don't want to speak too big, but when I think about what might be accomplished from this, I'm thinking we can all drive our electric cars around, create power, put it back into the system, and in a sense, become our own power plants. Is that too broad of a way to think about this?
No, it's not. This really was a historic landmark action taken by the commission. You're right, it's complicated, but to boil it down, we are responsible for ensuring competition and technology in the wholesale markets that the commission oversees. And what we've done is open those markets to aggregated, distributed energy resources. You mentioned it, rooftop solar, electric vehicles, really advanced water heaters, things that hide in plain sight, but that have tremendous power, and that power is mighty. And it really does have the capacity to be a game changer, a fundamental shift in the way that we generate, distribute, and consume power in this country.
Why approve this?
So we're really undergoing a dramatic energy transition in the U.S. You're seeing the cost of renewables come down. You're also seeing increased consumer demand for cleaner sources of energy, from everyone from Fortune 500 companies to individual families. And so our role is to oversee competition in the marketplace. I'm a big believer in markets and in opening those markets to new technologies. I want to ensure that we have a regulatory ecosystem in place that enables new technologies to thrive and to have the opportunity to be compensated for their attributes. And so we felt the time was right. We had a strong and robust record that was developed, and we moved forward and took the action. And I'm really, really excited to see what this will mean for U.S. consumers, for the economy, and for the environment going forward.
Yeah, and you know, listen, obviously, Neil, for all the wrong reasons, particularly PG&E utilities have been in focus, and obviously you inherited an impossible situation. You know, decades of neglect, especially out west, we've seen have led to fires. People have lost their lives. The utility system needs tens of billions of dollars just to upgrade to get back to standards that should have been outdated 30 years ago. What could this mean for the national utility grid in a time when I'm not even sure we're going to have the money to fix these problems, which, as we've seen, are not only outdated, but they're dangerous?
Well, I want to be clear, particularly through this difficult period where we're dealing with the challenges being posed by the pandemic, coupled with the fires out west, that utilities, and particularly utility line workers, are really heroes and have really stepped up through this. And I think right now our focus during this pandemic is where it should be, on our frontline healthcare workers, on law enforcement. But when this is over and America gets up off the mat, I do hope we take a moment to thank our utility workers who have made heroic sacrifices to ensure that the lights stay on through this crisis. What I think this means for the future of the power sector in the U.S. And the transportation sector is that if we see the increased deployment of these innovative technologies and these clean energy technologies, you're already seeing innovation squeeze carbon out of the power sector in the U.S. But the single greatest source of carbon emissions in the U.S. has been in the transportation sector. If this shift in our wholesale electricity markets, enabling electric vehicle owners and operators to provide that energy and spinning reserves into our markets, if it leads to an accelerated deployment of electric vehicles, that's also going to have a positive impact in squeezing carbon out of the transportation sector. And this is what consumers want. This is where our markets are taking us. I want to be clear, this is not a regulation. This is not command and control regulation. This is not a subsidy. This is simply enabling markets to allow new technologies to flourish.
Yeah, and a lot of fossil fuel industry executives watch this program and they might be thinking, oh my gosh, I thought this was the Trump administration. They're trying to put us out of business. You still support pipelines and more reliable pipelines in some cases, but it's clear, Neil, that you also see the future.
So I think our responsibility, we are a fuel neutral, technology neutral regulator. My fundamental obligation is to ensure for Americans that they have access to affordable and reliable power, that when they hit that switch, the lights come on. And yes, there's no doubt today, we still need fossil energy to ensure the reliability of the grid. But as we undergo this energy transition, we want to make sure that the markets allow this transition to take place in the most economically efficient way that also preserves the reliability of the grid. So we're still going to need to continue our responsibility to evaluate applications for pipelines under the Natural Gas Act, which is one of our core responsibilities. But we can also create that regulatory ecosystem to enable these new technologies access.